Okay, now we are broadcasting. Hello, everyone. We are going to be starting the webinar in approximately 2 or 3 minutes. You can bear with us. Excellent, brilliant. So we have people already coming in. We're going to start the webinar in approximately 2 or 3 minutes. So we give a little more room for participants to come over. We are here with Mohamed Asaria from Range, and Semotiuk from Pace Law Firm, and Brennen McConnel from Paragon Principal Capital. How are you doing, guys, today?
Fantastic, fantastic. How are you?
Brilliant. All good, all good. Thanks very much. We're going to give approximately a couple of more minutes, so attendees can start to join us. It is 25 to 3.
Be interesting to see in the chat room where people are from. If anybody's already on, maybe say where you're from in the chat room. It'd be interesting to see.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Let's just...
Oh, Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome.
Nice, welcome.
I was there a while ago, maybe about 2 years ago. It's quite a place.
Yeah, I've been there as well around 4 or 5 years. I remember we did an event in Lagos, very interesting city. From Winter Springs, from Florida.
Must be pretty hot there now. They're having a heat wave there, I think.
Oh, wow.
Andy, I'm broadcasting from Dubai. I mean, we're 45 degrees.
You're used to it, though.
Yeah, it's not a competition we want to win, but I think by default we're in prime position for that.
I see we got someone from Nigeria again. Oluwafemi Idowo, Nigeria. Welcome.
Brilliant. Another person from Lagos saying,
yeah,
it's good to hear.
No, and I think, I think this has become super topical in Western Africa at the moment. There's a lot of people seriously looking at second citizenship for reasons we'll discuss. But it's a very sensible strategy to pursue. It's life insurance provides you security after your days, but this provides you security in 3 months. It provides you with a comfort blanket, for want of a better word.
Indeed, it's really important, especially with always happening as well in Southeast Asia and so on. It is, 3 months, the ability to get a passport and the ability to apply for an E2 visa is certainly something that has to be really, really taken into consideration for future planning.
Oh, someone from Peru. I was just going to say, we have a lot of people from Nigeria. One of our lawyers in our office is from Nigeria. And it's a great country to work with.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, guys, if we're going to start the webinar with the formal presentations and with the agenda. In the meantime, basically, people are going to start coming over. So thanks very much once again to all the panelists, to Andy, to Mohammed, and to Brennen for joining us, and thanks very much to all the to all the attendees that are going to join us during the day of today. And formally speaking, good morning the Americas, afternoon Europe and UK, and good evening China and Southeast Asia. And today it is my pleasure to host this investment migration panel. Today we will be speaking about how to economically migrate to the US by acquiring a Grenada citizenship and applying for an E2 visa. The webinar will take approximately 75 minutes, and after each presentation we'll be able to take questions, and we'll end up with an open discussion for more questions if needed. After introducing our panelists and doing a short poll, we will be speaking about citizenship and residence planning by myself. Then Mr. Mohamed Asaria from Range Developments will be speaking about Grenada citizenship and investment through real estate in the Sixth Senses development. Andy Semotiuk from Base Law Firm will be speaking about how to apply, how to get an E2 visa to the United States. And Brennen McConnel from Paragon Principal Capital will be speaking about the real estate investment leading to the E2 visa. So, having said that, I would like to formally introduce our panel. Our first speaker, it is Mohamed Asaria, which is the founder, managing director, and board member of Range Developments. He is born and raised in England, and Mr. Asaria has a dual background in law and investment banking. A graduate of Trinity College in Cambridge, he began his career at Lovells, the international law firm. Then he moved to the HSBC prior to founding Range Developments, the leading citizenship by investment developer in the Caribbean. Range Developments is the only developer to have completed 2 5-star resorts under citizenship by investment programs: Park Hyatt in St. Kitts and the Caribbean Resort and Spa Kempinski in Dominica. Also, Range Developments has gained a reputation for developing ultra-luxury, high-end resorts that are transformational. So, good afternoon, Mohammed, and I hope that you're doing well. We are looking forward to your presentation.
So much for your kind words, and thank you so much for your invitation, Andre. Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thanks very much for your time. Our second guest, it is Andy Semotiuk, which is an US and Canadian immigration lawyer. Andy is a member of the bars of New York and California in the United States, in Ontario, and basically in Canada as well. In his 40-year career, he has helped over 10,000 clients with various legal programs. Mr. Semotiuk is an associate of Pace Immigration in Toronto, Canada, and he also writes a column for Forbes on investors in immigration, and his articles have been read by over 1 million users. Andy, how are you doing? And thanks very much for joining us today.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this panel.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Andy. And our next guest speaker, it is Brennen McConnel, which is the partner of Paragon Principal Capital. Brennen has more than 12 years of experience in acquiring and managing the rehabilitation of rental properties in various cities around the United States. He and his firm have helped over 100 immigrants investors and their families to reach their immigration and investment goals through the EB-5 and E2 programs. Prior to founding Paragon Principal Capital, Brennen worked at a boutique American investment bank where he was responsible for managing all aspects of the company's overseas operations and fundraising efforts. He received his BA in Economics and International Studies from Denison University in Ohio. So welcome, Brennen, as well, and thanks very much for joining us in this panel today.
Thank you, Andres. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for putting this together.
My pleasure is mine. Pleasure is mine. Thanks very much. So right now, we'd like to do a quick poll. So if you wouldn't mind to tell us where you are watching, this will take around 10 to 15 seconds. So we have a little bit of a sense. The first answers are coming. So thanks very much. And a few more are getting there. Excellent, thanks very much. And the Americas, basically Americas comprise South, Central, and North America, followed by Europe and Africa, and then Southeast Asia and Asia. Thanks very much, everyone. So basically what I'm going to be doing now is just give it a little bit of overview to what is citizenship and what is residence, because here we're going to be talking about how to gain citizenship and investment in Grenada through the real estate option, and rich developments, and is going to tackle that in the residence status, in this case through the H visa, and just to make sure that we are on the same space and time. Basically, residence, we know that refers to the right to live, work, and study under certain conditions, and citizenship, at the end of the day, the right to apply for a passport, voting rights, and in this case, to apply for an H visa. The combinations of these two, they are extremely important, as we are going to see during today's webinar. And at the end of the day, something that it always reminds me, and it reminds me my own parents, is that my parents, they used to tell me that in life you can choose everything apart from your parents. And that also conditions the place at the end of the day where you are born, and your citizenship possibilities and your children's possibilities for development. Thanks to programs like Caribbean programs, Grenadian citizenship, the H visa, and the investments around, as we are going to see with Mohammed from Range and Brennen from Paragon. People, they are able to choose where do they want to invest and where do they want to rely in the future for them and for their families. So having said that, a little bit of an overview basically on citizenship and residence, how it basically started, and why there is this economic migration. At the end of the day, as we were saying before, investment migration programs, they enable nations to grant residence or citizenship rights to qualified applicants. Grenada through the citizenship investment program, and the E2 visa or the EB5 in the US. Obviously, in the past 10, 15 years, this trend has been on the rise, and we certainly can see why. It started basically in the historical rationale of investment migration programs has been global mobility. The first program, also in the Caribbean, helped with this economic migration and global mobility need, and then other programs follow suit, like the US EB5 and other Caribbean programs like Grenada and so on. Then the needs of the applicants, they start to be more and more important. Here we are looking into a second citizenship, as we are seeing it now, basically as a policy insurance. We are seeing that clients, they want to have peace of mind, they want to have a brighter future, they want to gain education for their children, and all of these start shaping the investment migration programs and the investment migration market as we see it. EU jurisdictions as well, they start to issue their own, to have their own residence and citizenship programs. So basically this, and actually with the pandemic, moves to the investment migration programs and the CDI and RBI programs as an asset tool, as something that it is extremely important to have for clients, to have an edge against geopolitical risk and market volatility. At the end of the day, having a second passport, and in this case, that allows to have a second residence in the US through an H visa, wrapped with a real estate investment, basically protects from the inherent risk that being a citizenship for a certain jurisdiction has. I mean, that, you know, that inability of choosing that we have at birth. We can cover it up with, we can basically choose it. We can eliminate that risk actually by applying for a Grenadian citizenship program in being to an H visa. At the end of the day, when applied a citizenship or a residence program, when applied through a real estate-based investment, applicants, they can obtain capital appreciation, rental yields, and it is something that at the end of the day, it is for life. And as any other alternative assets like Find One investment, citizenship and residence, it is an asset tool that it is a must nowadays to be in the financial diversification planning of a high net worth individual. So basically, in citizenship and residence planning, we talk about that allows us to clients to have a safe harbor through a Grenadian citizenship in the Grenada in the US, basically where people can have good education and good systems in general, allows to financially diversify their assets by investing in this case in Grenada, in the Six Senses project, and in the US through different business opportunities there. And obviously as well, it can help with tax efficiency if planned carefully and preventively, it can help with tax optimization, obviously on a case-by-case basis. All of these, at the end of the day, helps with wealth preservation. And these type of investments that we're going to see today, they help actually on this because they are real estate-backed citizenship by investment options, and that helps from the long and mid-term planning. And obviously, finally, we talk about the lifestyle. A Caribbean citizenship, it helps that lifestyle, that base in the Caribbean, in that global mobility that we're speaking. And at the end of the day, this is a really good moment to, if not start thinking, to start acting, because citizenship and residence planning is an all-weather investment tool. Like gold or find one investment, it brings up its value in turbulent time. It acts as a policy insurance and at the same time as an asset tool. Nowadays, we are going out of confinement, but we can also strategize time because we are working more. And that helps actually to strategize the time to prepare the applications. And finally, the process is convenient because the process can be done remotely, or at least obviously documents, they can be prepared that way. But that's enough of me speaking. I would like to pass to our first guest, Mr. Mohamed Asaria from Range Development, who will be speaking about Grenada Citizenship by Investment Program. And how a Caribbean citizenship can help applicants, and how specifically an investment in real estate in 6 senses, it is such a good investment and can trigger that E2 visa in the United States. So thanks very much, and thank you very much, Mohammed, for being with us.
Good afternoon once again, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. And it's a real pleasure to work with the CSB and Malta Sotheby's group. For all of you listening, they have a very long pedigree in this business, both real estate and citizenship, and Andre is a very experienced practitioner. So, when we choose our partners who we work with, we're very careful, we're very selective, but we're very, very pleased to be working with the CSB group and Malta Sotheby's, and very pleased to be here today. So let me tell you a little bit about my company, and then we can focus a little bit more about citizenship in Grenada. I started Range Developments in 2012. And really, it was born out of the last financial crisis. The crisis of 2008 brought a lot of anxiety across the Middle East and resulted in the Arab Spring. I think the impact of COVID is going to be felt very deep in the emerging markets, and some of the stresses have yet to manifest themselves. Our headquarters are in Dubai, and in 2012, when I started my business, there was a great demand for second citizenship, not because of global mobility, but because all around Dubai and the Middle East, countries where their existence was questionable with the Arab Spring, whether it was Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Iraq. So a lot of good high net worth individuals from these countries really required a second citizenship. And I stress, not for mobility, but for the pure fact of the political insecurity, and their home country no longer provided them the citizenship they needed in which they could operate. And as Andreas very well put, you can choose everything apart from your parents. So that is really when the big choice for choosing a second citizenship started in the Middle East. And it was against this background I first came across second citizenship. I traveled to the lovely island of St. Kitts, which was one of the first pioneers of citizenship by investment. They've had a program since 1983. And we worked with the government to restructure the law to facilitate the development of sustainable assets under the citizenship by investment scheme. Prior to us embarking on this journey with the relevant governments as stakeholders in the Caribbean, the only asset you could acquire for second citizenship was an apartment. And really in an island like St. Kitts of 50,000 people, or Grenada of 100,000 people, how many apartments do you need? There's saturation. However, God has blessed the Caribbean with a lot of sun and a lot of sand, and some great airlift into the markets of North America and Europe, and really provided a natural pool of tourists to enjoy that. However, the hospitality assets on the islands had not been keeping up with some of the Caribbean's competitors. So we sat down with the government and we said, you know what, let's work out how to pool this capital and develop fantastic assets and really elevate the standard of tourism. This will create jobs for the island, and it will create sustainable investments for the individuals looking to obtain second citizenship. We signed up with the government of St. Kitts in 2013. We started construction on the Park Hyatt in 2014, and we opened this hotel in 2017, the Park Hyatt St. Kitts, the first hotel to be finished under the citizenship program of St. Kitts, or any Caribbean island for that reason, to reviews of Best New Hotel in the Caribbean by CNN, Top 100 Hotel in the World by Condé Nast. So we're very proud of what we achieved in St. Kitts. We opened the Kempinski in Dominica in 2019 to similar reviews. And at the end of, or at the middle of last year, we embarked on the Sixth Senses project in Grenada. As Andreas mentioned, we're the only company which has a track record of delivery. We're privileged to be entrusted by 1,600 people with their money who have invested with us. And of those 600 main applicants, there have been 4,000 individuals who we've assisted and obtained second citizenship through one of the range projects. And most of all, we're privileged to have been created 2,300 jobs in the island which we've worked. So it's a win-win for the investor, for the government, and the people of the Caribbean, as it uplifts the tourism standard, and it also enhances the citizenship of the individual who's embarking on this program. Pictures, obviously much better than words. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the Park Hyatt St. Kitts. It was named Caribbean Hotel of the Year in 2017 by Caribbean Journal. Similar reviews for our Kempinski Dominica, Caribbean Hotel of the Year by the same periodical. And with your continued support, we'll make it a hat trick in Grenada with the Sixth Senses in the end of 2022, when that hotel is scheduled to open. Here are a few more illustrations of the Park Hyatt in St. Kitts, which is reopening on the 1st of October. All plans are underway, all safety protocols are being implemented. On the left-hand side is our main suite, on the right-hand side is the adult swimming pool. So as you can see, we are a developer first, and we pay attention to the finest details, because it's really our ability to build at the highest level which will provide you or ensure the returns that you're expecting from your investment are achieved, and that you're able to exit your investment after conclusion of the holding period to another investor who also wishes to obtain second citizenship as per the laws of the land. And that's really only possible because we adopt the highest investment philosophy. Here's some other reviews from New York Times, Forbes, Travel Week, and People about us, and some about our project in Dominica. We worked with the government of Dominica in 2015 to restructure the citizenship law, introduce a real estate limb, worked with them on efficiency of processing, signed a development agreement at the end of 15, started work in 2016, and notwithstanding two very severe windstorms, we were able to open this hotel to similar reviews in 2019. The Caribbean is not an easy place in which to build. A beach is definitely not a benign construction environment. There's challenges with labor. There's very few hotels in the Caribbean to this standard. There's challenges with the supply chain. I have a business partner who's based in the Caribbean. He has 4 decades of construction experience under his belt. He's built 2 of the finest hotels and is now working on the 3rd. And we have a very, very well qualified team, which is able to achieve execution at this level. And that's why so many people have trusted Range Developments, not just the investors, but leading brands like Hyatt, Kempinski, and now the Intercontinental Hotel Group, which owns the Sixth Senses. So with Range, you're investing with a trusted counterparty, which has a history and track record of delivery, and we're the only people in that field. At the end of 2018, I was invited by the government of Grenada to develop in Grenada, and we acquired the site that you can see on your screen in front of you. It's 70 acres of the most beautiful land I've seen in the Caribbean. And as they say in real estate, it's location, location, location. The first hotel on this site will be the Sixth Senses. It's a 100-room hotel spread over 28 acres. And in the luxury tourism landscape post-COVID, it's probably have the most ideal design. Why? Because it's not about social distancing, it's about natural distancing. It has a 20% built up density on the land. There is no main reception building. There's small little structures. There's no big buffets. There's 3 intimate restaurants. There's 31 swimming pools. There's no elevators because it's a villa only type development. So, you know, the luxury traveler today is going to be looking for a resort which has been designed in this way, where they can naturally distance without being conscious of surrounded by crowds. Obviously, if people wish to interact, there's obviously those opportunities. And that is why we believe that we will be able to achieve the highest rate in the Caribbean. And this will become one of the crown jewels in Caribbean tourism. Unfortunately, most hotels in the Caribbean today are high density structures, a couple of 100 rooms on 2 or 3 acres of land. And that's not really conducive to an ideal destination post-COVID. So all our hotels have been designed with the same spread out philosophy, the luxury resort philosophy, and that bodes well today for the luxury traveler. So Grenada has had a citizenship by investment program for the past 2 decades, but really in the last 12 months, it has become super popular. And a lot of that coincided with our entry into Grenada, because there were 4 suggestions that I personally made to the government, which were well received by the government, all implemented. And those were a realignment of price. Previously, the price point was $350,000, a minimum investment in real estate. The government realigned the price to coincide with our entry to ensure it was in a similar price with all the other real estate options in the Caribbean. And that really added to the appeal of the program. The second and equally as important amendment was the processing. The processing has been digitized. It can all be done online through this COVID period. And there is a new team in the unit, and passports are being issued and citizenship is being granted within a 3 to 4 month period. This was an 18-month period, so they've worked really hard to increase the efficiency without reducing the integrity of the program, because it's vital. This is not a pay and play scheme. So good lawyers will have to prepare your files. The government of Grenada will get to know you by doing a desktop due diligence process. There's no need to visit or reside in Grenada. They carry out due diligence to a third-party private company, as well as making non-civilian checks on your background through their international partners. And then only is a decision made to issue second citizenship. If you look at us statistically, we have a 98% success rate. We're very careful who we onboarded clients because we wish to maintain that success rate. That's important to ourselves and important to all of our clients. And having that level of diligence is fantastic, because it means that the integrity of the passport, or citizenship which you're acquiring, will remain strong, and it will be able to open more and more borders for you and more doors for you and achieve your objectives, not just in the short term, but in the long and the medium term as well. And the fourth change that the government of Grenada made, which is really super important, because a smart investor will always ask, how do I exit my investment? Even before they've made it, they want to know there's a feasible exit plan. So to coincide with our entry, there was a change in legislation. And it said, if you make an investment of $220,000 in a real estate project in Grenada, after a 5-year holding period, you can resell that investment to another investor who can also apply using that same unit for second citizenship, and the original investor maintains his citizenship in perpetuity. So there's a very sensible exit plan. And not only do you have a capital exit plan, the hotel will also generate income based on the high standard of the hotel, based on being designed perfectly for the luxury traveler in this day and age, that it will generate an income for you. And that income is not just from the food revenue or the accommodation revenue, but all the revenue generated from the hotel. You take your portion, 1 out of 575 shares. So you have that percentage. And really the other amendment which was made to the law of Grenada on the citizenship side is that they made the definition of dependents very generous. So you can include elderly parents, you can include children below the age of 30, there's no need for an education requirement. And most importantly is you can go horizontally across the family chain. You can include your siblings if they're not married, if they're above 18 and they don't have children. And Grenada is the first citizenship in the world to grant that concession to family applicants because they realize that people are doing this for their children, for their siblings, for their parents. You know, it's not an individual decision. This is a second citizenship is a very well thought out strategy. People do it for their children's education. And, you know, where Grenada really has the edge over all of its Caribbean peers, and arguably some of its peers in Europe and beyond, is that it's not just a travel document. St. Kitts, Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua, they have great visa-free access. You can travel to 130 countries around the world. Grenada is the same. It has all of that, plus visa-free to China, one of the only 5 countries in the world, which gives you visa-free access to China, the world's largest or second largest economy, depending on whether you read the South China Morning Post or the Wall Street Journal. But let's not get political. But aside from being a travel document, Grenada also provides you the ability to migrate and access the US economy through its E2 visa treaty. Now, what is an E2 visa treaty and how does Grenada have such a benefit? I will just touch upon this and I will let Mr. Andy dwell on this during his presentation, given he is one of the leading lawyers on this subject. So let me take you back a little bit in history. In 1983, Grenada was very close to the Russian Federation and the Cubans. And there was a lot of infrastructure development going underway, which was causing anxiety to the United States. So the then president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, liberated Grenada, for want of a better word. And as part of the reparations of this liberation, awarded Grenada a Treaty of Trade and Commerce. And in that Treaty of Trade and Commerce is enshrined a US E2 visa treaty. And what is a US E2 visa treaty? At its simplest, it says if you are a Grenadian, you, your wife, your children below 21 can migrate to the United States for you to pursue your business ambitions. There's no minimum investment. You just have to be from Grenada. Now, there's lots of treaties with lots of different countries, but Grenada is really the only one which has a sensible citizenship program, which has a very flexible E2 visa treaty. You know, you can move at 5-year multiples. Grenada has very wide visa-free access, which other of the citizenship by investment countries engaged in, or which have E2 visas treaties don't benefit from. And it's also a long time. You can go for 5 years, which is renewable. But I will let Andy talk more about that. But really, the key is we've now gone from having a second citizenship, which provides luxury, which is mere visa-free travel around the world, and a backup plan, which is the 4 other Caribbean islands, to utility, which provides you the ability to move and access the world's largest economy. And that has become super important in the post-COVID crisis. On a daily basis, we're speaking to individuals from Africa who are saying, we're worried about political security more than ever. We think COVID is gonna have or manifest itself in a much more harsher way than it's currently being experienced over the next 6 to 12 months. We don't believe Nigeria, South Africa, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire provide an environment in which we wish to keep our family. Obviously, you know, we don't want to live on a small little island. We wish to diversify by having a business in the United States and move our family there. And the natural choice in that case is Grenada. So for families who are looking at a US or a migration to a large economy, Grenada is the second citizenship option for you. A lot of individuals where I sit in Dubai, they've realized their businesses are less relevant due to COVID. They've always had an ambition to migrate to the United States or a larger economy. And COVID provides an inflection point. They're thinking, okay, it's going to be hard work restarting our business as an expatriate in one of these jurisdictions. Let's take a Grenada citizenship and let's move to the United States. And this has become even more topical since the end of last year, since November the 22nd, if my memory serves me right, when there were some pretty fundamental changes to the EB5 program. The prices tripled or quadrupled, and nothing was really done to alleviate the waiting list. So within 6 months, an individual can obtain Grenada citizenship and an E2 visa and be living in the United States. So if Andres from Malta decided he wishes to go down this path on the 15th of July, by the 15th of December or 15th of January, if everyone works really hard, he can be moving to Miami if that's what he wishes to do. Now, here's a table. I'm not here to say that the other countries are not good. They're all fantastic countries. They all have their nuances. But what this table clearly says is Grenada's key advantage: visa-free to China, E2 visa with the United States, and very generous with the children and the siblings. If that's not important to you, obviously the other options should be considered. But at the same price, a lot of people will think, okay, we'll keep that optionality there. But that being said, nothing to detract from St. Kitts, Dominica, St. Lucia, and Antigua. All very viable options. We have projects in St. Kitts and Dominica that we'd be delighted to also present to you. But today is all about Grenada. That's a schematic of where you can travel to Grenada with a Grenadian citizenship. Pretty significant area of the world's travel mass, given China and the Russian Federation were included on that. An e-visa to India, all of South America. So, a very large percentage of the world's surface area, and even more so if someone was to shade in the United States with a different color, given the special E2 visa treaty. Now, when you get to Grenada, what I think will really surprise everyone is the strength of its education system. 25% of Grenada's GDP comes from education. They have St. George's University, and I know it's hard to believe for an island of 110 or 120,000 people, but 1% of the world's doctors graduated from this facility. It's the largest provider into the US for medical residencies for the last 10 years combined. There's 10,000 people between students and staff in that campus. This is a $2.5 billion venture. That shows that Grenada has a rule of law which is investor friendly, and that it's been attracting investments of this size. So a pretty incredible facility for a Caribbean island. How long does it take? I mentioned 3 months at the beginning, a couple of case studies. This one was approved in 92 days, 81 days, 78 days, 89 days. So as you can see, very expeditious. I will leave these slides to Andy, and hopefully Andy will cover the differences between the E2 and the EB5. The one which I will just point out is tax. If you're not in the US for 122 days, you don't have to pay your tax on your worldwide income. And here's a couple of E2 visa samples. How much does it cost? The cost of the investment is $220,000, prescribed by law as the minimum amount. Each individual is investing in a real estate investment trust through our structure, which owns the Six Senses Hotel in Grenada. They also receive a percentage of revenue. 10% of that is paid up front at the outset. Then the fees in pink are paid directly to the government at the beginning of the application. The due diligence process commences. Within 90 days, a yes or no is given. If a yes is given, the balance is payable. And if it's a rejection, which is going to be unlikely given the due diligence we do before onboarding a client, we refund whatever has been paid to us. I will point out, in full transparency, there's 2 ways to obtain citizenship of Grenada. One is real estate under Section 11 of the law, and one is under Section 10 of the law, making a non-refundable contribution. That non-refundable contribution is a donation. You don't get anything in return. But the price point between a non-refundable contribution in real estate is minor. It's $60,000 or $70,000. So in this family of 4 people, the comparison on the donation arm would be $230,000. So the pitch to an investor is, dear investor, spend an extra $70,000, obtain an asset for $220,000. It'll generate you an income. And after 5 years, you can resell it to someone else who wants a second citizenship. And that's a very powerful pitch. And why is the differential so low? We touched upon it at the beginning, because the government needs employment, and it recognizes that the private sector is going to drive the economy forward to bring that unemployment rate right down from 29 into the teens. And if we're successful and together, that's where we'll achieve our ambition. Six Senses voted the world's best travel brand by Travel and Leisure for the last 3 years. Recently acquired by Intercontinental Hotel Groups for $400 million. Really popular brand, growing across Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Some perspectives of the hotel: this is the spa, the over-the-water restaurant, the main areas, some of the residential product on the hillside, you know, the alchemy bar, as we call it. And really, it is a very well thought out hotel. Construction started in February, site work started, the land was cleared, we started putting in the construction roads, then we got locked down. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be back on site as the country permits, and will be completed by the end of November 2022. Whatever time has been lost to 1 month, 2 months because of the lockdown, we will recover. And in conclusion, I'll say we integrate ourselves into society. We've been provided an opportunity, not just us, but our investors, to participate in the Caribbean. And in return, not only do we create employment, but we also have to support the societies in which we operate. And we have a very diverse social portfolio focusing on children, family, entrepreneurs, and communities. And I think that's something which is very important, both to us and our investors. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. And thank you for your time this afternoon.
Excellent, Mohammed. Thanks very much for that. It was a great presentation. Really appreciate it. History and history of range and history of the investment migration area in the Caribbean. Very insightful. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Very. Thanks very much. Just basically, I had a couple of questions that they were submitted before we started the webinar, and this ties up a little bit with that investment side, basically on the Grenada Citizenship, Mohammed. Basically, more or less, in terms of the share investment that the investors they buy, which are the expectations in terms of the returns, the yields and stuff, more or less on an average side?
Sure. So we have two returns on investment. The first is the right to stay. So during construction, you can spend 2 weeks a year at any of our other Caribbean resorts. And once the hotel is open, you have 2 weeks at the Six Senses Hotel. Now, a lot of people will say, we're living in India or we're living in Nigeria. It's a long way to come. But what we say is, if the ultimate opportunity is to end up in the US, we're a 3-hour flight from Miami. And that's really going to be an advantage. You're so close to your home country, and you can spend 2 weeks there. In addition, there's a financial return. We expect in year 1, once the hotel opens, the yield will be 2%, and that'll rise to 4 to 5% as the asset stabilizes towards the end of the holding period.
Brilliant. No, that's clear. That's fantastic. Then I had a few other questions, which are basically, what you were saying, one that you already covered is basically if you get basically rentals for your return, for the return on investment of the investor at the end of the day, which you already have covered. And then we have a few more which are more related basically to what are the E2 visa, which is basically, proof of address, or if there is that accidental EB5 over time. So if you think, which is basically we can pass it on those ones to Andy, so we tie in with that part. So thanks very much for that. Andy, if you would like to start your presentation, and then we can tackle any other further questions that they are going to be appearing at the end of the Brennen. So leave it to you to your presentation, and thanks very much as well for speaking on the E2 visa.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Terrific presentation, Mohammed. Very jam-packed with information. Quite a delivery. I have to compliment you on that. As I was thinking about putting forth this presentation, I was trying to sort of frame it to consider it in terms of context. And we're in the midst of this pandemic right at the moment, and we're restricted in travel, but in normal times, we do a lot of traveling, flying all over the place. And I want to share this one story, which I assure you I will connect to my presentation, but it relates to the whole area of flying. Few of us really reflect on it, but we haven't, as a humanity, we haven't been flying for, it's just under 100 years since the Wright brothers first flew Kitty Hawk, their airplane, for the first time. So less than 100 years ago, mankind was not flying at all. It's incredible how far we've gotten. And the reason why I wanted to share that story is that this E2 visa option, this gambit that I want to talk about and that Mohammed has so beautifully introduced in his presentation, is something new, like air travel was. When the Wright brothers were trying out their airplanes, they were criticized fiercely by PhDs in physics and, from the universities and other people who said, if man was supposed to fly, he should have wings and so on. It was not really something that people thought about and that they expected. But over time, as the Wright brothers showed, indeed, man can fly. And today we're flying all over the world. The same thing might be said about the Grenada E2 visa scenario. So let me just share my screen here, and let's take a look at that Grenada option. Let's see if we can just find my presentation here. All right. So I mentioned that it's relatively new. That is to say, only in the last few years has the E2 visa from Grenada really gained some traction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover what are the requirements pertaining to the E2 visa, and then comment further on this issue of how it's gaining traction and becoming more popular for investors. So what are the requirements? I'm thinking about these people that Mohammed has mentioned, the people who have realized through the pandemic or otherwise that perhaps their family needs a second option B, that strategically maybe there's some instability, or maybe the family, the young people, the children that are coming up may not have the opportunities that the family would like them to have. Considerations of that nature, maybe some of the people watching this webinar may have some sort of thoughts along those lines. And for that reason, they would probably want to know what are the requirements to get this E2 visa. So, well, you have to be an investor, and of course you have to be a member of a treaty country. In this case, we're talking about Grenada, and Mohammed mentioned that thanks to President Reagan, Grenada is the only country in the Caribbean that has this E2 trade treaty that makes it possible for people who are citizens of Grenada to get the E2 visa. And further, another requirement of the would-be person who wants the E2 visa would be that they have to make an investment of some sort. In legalese, they call it a substantial investment, but the exact amount depends on the cost of what's being bought, and the lower the cost, the greater the percentage, the higher the cost, the lower the percentage. I like to talk with clients about the amount, and I start off at the figure of $200,000 US. You can get an investment going, an E2 visa, for less, 150,000, maybe 100,000, possibly even lower. But I like to draw the analogy that getting lower down the line, it's like drinking wine that's being watered down with water. You can add a certain amount of water, it's still wine, but at some stage, it's no longer wine. You don't want to add any more water. Same thing here in terms of qualifying, depending on how much you're investing. So as a working rule, it's not a law, but as a working rule, I'd like to start at 200,000. That's generous as an investment, but it's pretty safe, particularly when we get into talking about real estate and like in that topic. And I know that Brennen will be talking on that theme, so that's why I mentioned that number. Well, the other thing is it has to be a real operating enterprise, meaning it's not speculative, it's the real deal. The investment has to be not marginal, meaning it's not just a pretend investment to fund the family, but that it's the real deal in terms of making an investment that is substantial relative to the total cost. So for example, buying a hotel and you invest, say, 200,000 for $1 million property, that's not marginal, that's substantial, and that's what they're talking about there. You have to be in control of the funds, and the funds obviously have to be put on at risk, meaning it can't be a fake investment, I'll pay you back, wink, wink type of investment. It's a commercial investment in the normal sense of the word. And you, the investor, have to develop and direct the business. This is an important little phrase, develop and direct, because it means that you can travel back overseas and come back in regularly, reasonably regularly. And you don't have to be sitting on top of the investment that you've made. You can have other people managing it so long as you develop and direct the investment. So this gives the investor a lot of freedom if you have a business to attend to overseas. And then there's a kind of a natural balance. I mean, if you're overseas, say more than 50% of the time, well, then there's a problem with, are you really developing and directing your investment in the US? But it's a kind of a balancing act, a gray area, but there are no policemen running around with machine guns looking, are you really managing, are you developing, and so on. But, an honest effort at developing and directing the business is really required. And then you have to play a role, a supervisory, executive, or a highly specialized role in terms of being qualified to get the E2 visa. Moving on, the process basically involves incorporating a company, which we can do for you within 3 weeks, getting a federal employer identification number, that is to say, registering with the IRS, the income tax people in the United States. We can get that for you in about an hour. You have to open a bank account for your company, the new company that we create, not yourself, but for the company. This would require your participation as an investor. You'd have to go to, say, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or wherever, but you can do that in roughly an hour. We need a business plan for your investment. That largely depends on who you're going with, what kind of investment you're making. I'm sure Brennen will be able to discuss that in a little more detail on his presentation. But I'm thinking like 3 weeks to do a business plan. If we have to do a business plan for you, you have to sign a lease or something. You have to, identify where is it that your business is going to be, where is it going to be operated from. And it can't be an apartment somewhere, where you're living, on the desk somewhere. It has to be a little more formal than that. I usually say to the investor, you should sign at least a 6-month lease. You could do one of these executive located offices, the popular offices that are available for rent, where you operate from there, you take your mail from there and so on, but you're not always there. But signing such a lease, take 1 hour to do that. Of course, you have to invest the money in the project to sign the deal and invest the money. I'm thinking 1 hour. Submit the application. We have to submit the application for you one day. That gives you kind of a timing of how these things are done. So the visa is processed at a US consulate, usually at your place of permanent residence or your citizenship. Barbados, in the case of Grenada, I believe, is the consulate, or it can be done anywhere where you live. If you have you may have the citizenship of Grenada, but you don't have to necessarily apply from the pertaining, the relevant US consulate there. You may be able to apply, let's say from Paris or some other location, Buenos Aires or wherever you may be. That's possible. We can work those details out. There's an interview involved. So this is not a visa for those people who do not speak English. It's difficult to get an E2 visa if you don't speak English, because how are you going to, direct and, run the business if you don't speak English? It's possible, you might say, well, I'm going to hire someone and I got a lot of money to pay and so on. But normally I would expect that someone would know at least some sort of basic English to get through the interview. And as I mentioned here, people who are under 14 or over 79 don't have to come to the interview, but everybody else in your family has to be there with you. Visa wait times take a couple of months to get the visa. I'm happy about the news that was circulated yesterday to the effect that US consulates are opening again soon for processing cases. They don't say how soon, but they say soon. So that's looking good. There are some consulates that are already open in terms of processing cases. I know, for example, Calgary in Canada is open as a consulate for interviewing people. I know overseas there are a few that are open as well now. So it's looking good on that front. And of course, at the interview, they're going to do a digital fingerprint, meaning, fingerprints to identify who you are and so on. Investment amounts and timing. Well, the fees are there, biometrics, and I put down 150,000 US. That's the national, payment in. You've already heard of what can be done in terms of investment in real estate and so on. I'm sorry, I should get back onto that. Investment amount, I'm talking about 150,000 US to go into the United States. I mentioned 200,000 earlier. I started at 200,000. I'm hoping to find a figure of about 150,000. You have to start somewhere, so that's what I do. And their legal fees, I'm thinking somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000 US. Visa processing time, 2 to 3 weeks. In a normal scenario, that's how long it takes from the time the submission is made to the time the visa is issued. The visas are valid for 5 years and renewable in 5-year increments for as long as you have a business going in the United States. These are particularly creative options for people from China, India, Middle East, and we're talking about Grenada. There are other countries also who have the E2 option, Turkey and Montenegro. This is something that you've already covered here in terms of the particulars on the Grenada, so I'll just skip on to the next slide. There's this Trump immigration ban. So if you're from Nigeria, for example, there's the ban and you can't come to the United States at the moment. But this is an indirect way of getting into the United States. You'll see the takeaway here, E2 visas are not affected, meaning, let's say you're from, I noticed that there are some people that are on this webinar from Nigeria. If you get the Grenada passport, you are now a citizen of 2 countries and you use the Grenada passport to get into the United States. So that's how you can get or circumvent this issue of being from a country that's banned from entry into the United States. So those are my general comments about the E2 visa. Happy to take any questions. One other thing about the Grenada route is this is the magic sauce to doing an E2 visa from Grenada. You must have been in Grenada. You must have established some residence. This is about nexus. I mentioned this legal term, nexus. You have to show that you have at least a residence, for example, 1-year lease. If you're dealing with Mohammed's scenario, I think that your investment pretty much will qualify you in that category. And you have to make the US investment after you become a citizen of Grenada. And finally, you can, here's a sort of I think I talked about people who don't speak English. There's a kind of a back door into the United States for those people. If you come to the United States for a visit as a B1, B2 visitor, once you get your Grenada citizenship, let's say you're from China and you don't speak English, but you want to get going on this E2 visa track. What you might do is get the citizenship, get a B1, B2 visa at the US consulate. You don't need to speak English for that. This is a visitor's visa for business or tourism. And once you're in the United States, you could conceivably apply for E2 status in the United States. That's not a visa, it's just a change of status to E2 status for a few years. And after 2 years, then go back out and apply for an E2 visa. The challenge with doing the E2 status is it's good while you're in the United States, but you cannot travel out of the United States and come back in on E2 visa because you don't have a visa, you just have status inside the United States. That's complicated. This is not for everyone. Let me just conclude my remarks by just saying the E2 visa from Grenada into the United States, I mentioned earlier about the Wright brothers and how this is a pioneering kind of a scenario. It's only in the last few years that people started using this Grenada route to come to the United States. It was a trickle at first. Last year, 2019, the total number of E2 visas from Grenada was under 50. So it's still new. This is a new pioneering way of coming to the United States. There are still lessons to be learned along the way. This is not for the faint of heart. I'm not going to say it's, slam dunk. It's doable. We have people who are obviously in the United States with E2 visas and so on, but it's not something to be done by a novice in terms of working on this. You should work with professionals in getting the E2 visa. Happy to answer any questions you may have. And with that, I'll turn the webinar over back to Andres.
Brilliant, Andy. That was a great presentation indeed. Thanks so much. It covered most of the questions. There are a few actually that we had since before the webinar, and but actually, Mr. Chen. It is asking, yes, we'll be sharing the slides and also there will be a recording available. Just give us some time. And Mr. Chen is asking if does a E2 visa holder is responsible for filing tax return in the US? How?
So I think Mohammed mentioned the magic days, how many days you can be in the US and still avoid or if you're less than those days, still be, I think it's 183 days in the taxation year is the magic number. But the basic gist of it, now, I should say, look, I'm not an expert in tax. You have to rely on your own tax advisors. I don't know what I'm talking about when we're talking about tax, but as a man to a man, walking and talking together, my take on this is you can have an E2 visa and you can be tax-free in the United States, provided you watch how long you are in the United States in any taxation year, enough to direct the business, but not enough to trigger taxes. And your friendly tax advisor in the United States will give you the exact sort of magic ingredients there.
Yeah, indeed. Aside from that, there are so many imponderables basically in terms of taxation. So many different things, particularities that is very difficult to give an exact answer to every question. But yeah, that is something that that I have been heard. I mean, it is a common doubt, to be honest with you. And then there are another ones that is basically, it is what I was discussing before. I mean, is it possible what they call, the accidental EB5? It's possible that, you start with A2 and then over time you grow. Is that sort of possible to happen?
Yes, it is. And recently I was in another webinar with some other experts with EB5, and they mentioned that there are some new programs, EB5, E2 EB5 investment options. Maybe Brennen can comment on that a little further, but I gathered from that discussion that they're now trying to link the two. There's some trickiness involved there because there's the question of if you're coming in on an E2 visa, you cannot have, there's some question about having immigrant intent, meaning permanent residence intent, if you're coming in on a non-immigrant, which an E2 visa is a non-immigrant visa. It's a work visa. It's not permanent residence. You can renew it in 5-year increments indefinitely, so long as you have the business going. But it should be understood it's the beginning of a journey towards permanent residence and citizenship in the United States. So just to comment a little further on that, the regional center option of the EB5 program now requires an investment of $900,000. So a person, or if you want to do a direct EB5 permanent resident application where you control the enterprise that's involved, you have to invest $1.8 million. But there are combinations where you can start off with your E2 visa, invest say 150, 200,000, and later sort of ratchet up to an EB5 qualified investment.
That's good to know. I mean, there are different possibilities at the end of the day, to turn that non-immigrant visa into an immigrant visa. It is very, very cool. Very, very good. So, I mean, at the end of the day, thanks again, Andy. I mean, we have seen how to get that Grenadian citizenship with Mohammed, with that investment in 6 senses. Why it is such a great idea, and why at the end of the day it is so helpful, in order to get to apply for an E2 visa, with you, how important it is to get that professional advice, both in order to apply for the Grenadian citizenship. As Mohammed was saying, this is not something that, you put it forward and that's it. I mean, the application for the Grenadian citizenship needs to be well taken care of from the professional side, but as well on the E2 side. I mean, there are certain things that need to be taken care of, and it's really important to come with professional advice. So thanks so much. I mean, I was thinking when I was giving you an introduction, is that you have helped over 10,000 clients, and they say that you need 10,000 hours of practice to become a master.
That's true. Malcolm, who is that? Malcolm, whatever his name is.
I mean, at the end of the day, I guess that you have done more than your 1 hour share of work for each particular client.
Right.
So just before passing to Brennen, I have another question, just basically, well, I mean, how does an E2 holder turn into a PR in the US? This has been covered to what we have been discussing before about the E2 turning into the EB5, but then if you would like...
Let me comment on that briefly.
Go for it.
There are a variety of ways. One is going to ratcheting up into an EB5 investment. Another is perhaps your spouse may be working for a US employer that might ultimately sponsor the spouse through what's called labor certification, resulting in the entire family getting a green card. A third way might be a relative, even someone more distant, like a brother or sister or a father or whatever, may be able to sponsor the E2 family, albeit that the processing time takes, let's say, 10 years. several of, or many of my clients are in that category from India, for example, where they have a relative sponsoring them. They have to wait a long time because it's the, you know, the relevant category is taking a long time to process. So they do the E2 visa and then wait, and ultimately that sponsorship gets them through. So there are some, there's a variety of potential green card options.
Brilliant, brilliant, excellent. That's fantastic, Andy. So now basically I will move on to Brennen. I mean, we have covered the Grenadian citizenship, the real estate options there with Mohammed, how to get the E2, and with Brennen, Brennen is going to explain us which particular investments in real estate as well in the US will lead into the E2 visa that Andy explained before. So thanks again, Brennen, for joining us. Thanks again for your patience in waiting for your turn to speak. So here you go. Thanks again, and I will leave it to you. Cheers.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Andy and Mohammed, for your wonderful presentations. Yeah, I think as we can all see there's a wealth of expertise in this virtual room here. So you know, anybody you know, wanting to proceed with any of the options here, you know, be rest assured that you're in very good hands. I am going to be sharing with you guys a specific E2 investment option that our firm has recently put together. Let me see here. So our firm, Paragon Principal Capital, has put together an E2 property investment model, which basically allows an E2 investor to partner with our firm to obtain an E2 visa and, you know, residency in the U.S. Through an investment in U.S. residential real estate, starting at just $300,000. And what this does is it allows the investor to start a new business, meet all the requirements of the E2 visa program, but at the same time really build a portfolio of hard assets that can, you know, turn into you know, long-term wealth and very stable cash flow for the investor. This is a program that our team has put together, really kind of building upon our experience in doing these types of single-family home rehab projects in the U.S. Our firm, Paragon Principal Capital, has been in business since 2011. We've got offices here in the U.S., also offices in China and Vietnam. We have funded over $1 billion of real estate development projects in the U.S. A lot of those have been EB5 investment projects. We've worked with over 100 EB5 and E2 investors to, you know, help them to achieve their immigration goals. At the same time, we've also been very active in doing these types of residential rehab projects, having rehabbed over 1,000 units of residential real estate. We have a team on the ground in the U.S., mostly focused in 3 key markets: Memphis, Tennessee, Houston, Texas, as well as Cleveland, Ohio. And we find and acquire value-add opportunities in purchasing single-family homes that can be acquired for a discount, rehabilitated, and then either sold or refinanced for a profit and rented out to qualified tenants. These are just some examples of some projects that we've done in the past. You know, we've done projects in Alabama, Illinois, Tennessee, Ohio, you know, in total, you know, five different states across the U.S. All of our projects meet a very strict criteria. You know, we look for properties that we know we're going to be able to do a significant value add through the rehab, and that way, recover a lot of our invested capital on each one of these transactions. And each one of the properties that we acquire, we also vet and make sure that we are able to either sell it for a substantial profit, or after refinancing the property, we're able to rent it out at a reasonable rate and produce positive cash flow through the lease out of the property. Why E2? I mean, a lot of this Andy covered in his presentation, so I won't dwell on this. But just to summarize it, it's a very fast route to getting to the U.S. It achieves a lot of the same goals as a green card, but one of the major benefits of the E2 visa, in comparison to the green card, is that you're not subject to U.S. global taxation as an E2 visa holder. Also, another important point is that your children that come over with you on the E2 visa are eligible for in-state tuition at many universities around the U.S. And can also attend U.S. public schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, for free. So why do we think that property investment is a particular compelling case for E2? We think that it offers a number of very important benefits to the investor that you may not get in other types of operating businesses like restaurants or cafes, or some of the other more popular E2 investment types. Number one is liquidity. So with an investment in real estate, at any time, if the investor wants to exit the investment, it's very easy to sell all of the assets in the real estate portfolio. Number two, recession resistant. So the markets that we're focusing on are all markets in which there is very little variation in the property values. And I've got some data that I'm going to show you in later slides here. But in comparison with larger markets like Los Angeles or Miami, where you see a lot of volatility in the property values, the markets that we focus on have been very stable long term and have a very strong base of middle income, blue collar tenants with stable jobs that are able to that are able to either purchase these homes for sale, or act as good quality tenants. Real estate is also one of the most, if not the most, tax efficient asset classes in the U.S. There's all kinds of benefits that you can get by investing in real estate. You can defer your tax liability through something called a 1031 exchange on the sale of each property. There's opportunities for tax benefits through investing in what are called opportunity zones, and a lot of our investment areas do meet those requirements for the opportunity zone benefits. And then there's all kinds of tax deductions that you can take from your operating expenses, like depreciation, mortgage interest, repairs, etc. Also, this model is very simple. It's still is operational intensive enough to to meet the requirements of the E2 program, but it's a much more simple formula than some of the complexities that go along with running a restaurant or a more operational intensive E2 business. Warren Buffett is famously quoted as saying, single-family homes in the U.S. are as an attractive an investment as you can make. If I had a way of buying a couple 100,000 of single-family homes and had a way of managing them, I would load up on them. Now, Warren Buffett, is unable to deploy billions of dollars into the U.S. single-family home market because that market is so fragmented, and has many different parties that you have to deal with, many different components that you have to kind of juggle at the same time. So it's very difficult for a large institutional investor to invest into a very large portfolio of single-family homes. But that gives the advantage to small business owners that are able to be more nimble and more flexible, and are able to deal with the fragmentation of the U.S. Single-family home industry. Warren Buffett, likes this asset class because it's backed by tangible hard assets with very little downside. There's always going to be demand for residential real estate. People always need a place to live, and I think that's especially come to light recently with COVID. As we see, the hospitality sector, restaurants really kind of struggling, but the home has become the center of life for everybody. People are working at home. People are people's home are really the center of their daily lives. It's also very easy to secure bank financing to leverage your investment and increase your returns. Banks are always willing to lend against real estate, whereas if you were investing in an operational business, it might be much more complicated to get a small business loan to help fund the operations of your restaurant. You've got multiple streams of value. You've got the rental income. You've got property appreciation, mortgage principal payoff, as well as tax deductions. The U.S. demographics favor rental homes. A lot more of the younger generation is starting to prefer to rent their home as opposed to buying it. Economics play a factor in that, but also a lot of younger people just like the flexibility of not being tied down to a home, and being able to move around to different cities depending on their lifestyle preferences or employment opportunities. Real estate in the U.S. is, as I mentioned, one of the most tax-favored asset classes in the U.S. And particularly in the markets that we're investing in, it's largely recession-proof, just because there's not a lot of volatility in the housing prices. And as I mentioned, people always need a place to live. And what we've seen with a lot of our properties is that because we focus on middle-income properties, so properties that are going to be rented out to a lot of blue-collar workers, what are often referred to as B-class properties. We actually see demand for those types of properties increase during economic hardship, because a lot of people that were in so-called A-class properties, they're very, very nice, rental homes, or maybe homeowners that decided to sell their homes because of economic hardship. They're now downsizing and moving into the types of single-family home rental properties that we offer, just because it's much more affordable. So why is now a good time to invest in E2? Well, as we can see with what's happening globally with COVID and restrictions on immigration, it appears that it's only getting tighter, as countries kind of close off due to COVID, and kind of a backlash to increased globalization. But as was mentioned previously, even though President Trump has issued a number of immigration bans this year, both the E2 and the EB5 programs have been protected by those bans. So it shows that the E2 as well as the EB5 programs are well protective and have kind of special status amongst the U.S. immigration programs. And that's because they're bringing investment to the U.S. They're creating jobs in the U.S. So it's a very politically favored program, because it does help to stimulate the U.S. economy. So I'll get into a little bit more details on the specifics of our offering. So our investment starts at $300,000. There's an administrative fee of 10% of the investment amount. With that investment, the investor gets majority ownership of a new company. The investor takes a 70% equity ownership stake into the new company. Average expected return on investment is 10% or more per year. Exit strategy is really at the investor's discretion. So anytime that an investor would want to liquidate the portfolio of houses, that can be done at any time, really. We offer flexibility on location. Currently, we are in 3 key locations: Memphis, Tennessee, Cleveland, Ohio, and Houston, Texas. But we are actively looking to expand into more markets in the future. So with the $300,000 capital investment, we'll aim to acquire about 10 homes per year. We will renovate each one of those homes, and we expect it to take about 2 to 3 months to renovate each home. Average renovation costs about $30,000. And then of those 8 homes that we renovate, we may sell approximately 5 of those to retail buyers, and then 3 of those we would refinance and then rent out to tenants, and then manage those homes through our property management company. So here you can see, with an initial investment of the $300,000 plus the $30,000 administrative fee, each year we're acquiring 8 homes, and we're taking 50 to 60% of those homes and selling them, but the remainder of the homes we are adding to the long-term hold portfolio of the investor. So each year the E2 company is adding more and more rental properties to their portfolio, and by year 5 we expect to have up to 20 homes that are under the long-term management of the E2 investor company. So why partner with Paragon to manage your U.S. real estate business? Well, we've been doing this for many years now. We've built up a pipeline of off-market deal opportunities. A lot of these types of deals you're not going to be able to find online, on the MLS, on Zillow.com, on Realtor.com. You're going to need to find heavily discounted properties in order to be able to successfully execute on a value-add rehab of the properties. So we're able to provide access to our off-market deal pipeline. We're also able to provide access to many different financing channels that allow us to increase the return on investment and use financing to both acquire the properties and to rehab the properties. The investor also gets use of our rehab property management and bookkeeping systems, and also has us as a local partner on the ground, to manage the day-to-day of the business, manage the acquisition process, manage the rehab process, and the property management. Compliance with E2 visa requirements. So this is not a passive or speculative investment in real estate. This is an actively managed business. It's very management intensive in that there's a lot of work that goes into identifying and acquiring these distressed properties. There's a lot of work that goes into rehabilitating the properties, as well as managing the properties after we have them rehabbed and leased out. So the E2 investor is going to be involved in that process. We're there to hold the investor's hand and to manage the day-to-day operations, but the E2 investor will be involved in the key decision-making processes of the business. Meets the requirement of a substantial investment. The investment of $300,000 is more than enough to qualify. $300,000 is maybe a little bit more on the high end of what you would see typically for an E2 investment. Andy was mentioning about $200,000. But what we offer with the higher investment is a much better protection of the downside. Because if you invest $200,000 into an operating business, like a restaurant or a cafe or something like that, you're not truly protected. Your downside is not truly protected by hard assets. Whereas with the investment in real estate, your investment is always protected by the hard asset value of the real estate. Also, we're confident that we can deliver a higher rate of return using our model. The company will also employ 2 employees right from the start, and then plan to add an additional full-time property manager by year 4 or 5. Here's a little bit more detail on some specific rehab projects that we've done in the past, just so you can see what the numbers look like. This is a property just outside Cincinnati, Ohio, that we bought for $55,000. We put in $22,000 into the rehab. The current estimated value is about $136,000, and it currently rents out for $1,155 a month. So after paying off all expenses and the mortgage, that gives us about $300 a month in cash flow. And then here's another property in Memphis, with similar numbers: $44,000 acquisition price, $24K rehab, current value at about $122,000. This one's rented out for just over $1,000 a month and gets $250 a month in cash flow. So as you can see, as you start to add more and more of these rental properties to your portfolio, each one is maybe $200, $300, $400 a month in positive cash flow. But as you start accumulating 5, 10, 15, 20 properties into your portfolio, then it really becomes very, very sustainable from a cash flow perspective. So here's a sample budget that we would use with an investment of $300,000. We would pair that with financing to acquire and rehabilitate the properties in order to buy up to 8 homes in 1 year. And then there's some operating expenditures as well. We've got the employee costs, we've got office rent, marketing dollars, accounting costs, utilities, things like that. But with this investment, we would expect to deliver an ROI of about 10% per year, and build up the 5-year portfolio to about 15 to 20 homes. Memphis is one of the key markets that we operate in. We like Memphis because it has such a large, diverse base of employers. Memphis is it's not the most well-known city in the U.S., but it has a number of very well-established Fortune 500 companies such as FedEx, International Paper, AutoZone. Because FedEx has their world headquarters here, the international airport in Memphis is actually the second largest in the world in terms of cargo airports. It's second only to Hong Kong. So with the world's second busiest cargo airport, and also centrally located right along the Mississippi River, and very well connected to highway and rail infrastructure. It's known as a logistics and distribution hub. in the central United States. So there's a very strong base of stable employers, providing lots of very, very good blue-collar jobs to middle-income renters. Over 50% of the residents in Memphis are renters, as opposed to the U.S. average of 30%. So that much better positions Memphis as a good market, to do these types of rental property investments. Houston is another one of our key markets. It's actually the nation's fourth largest and fastest growing city. Historically, Houston has been reliant on the oil and energy sector, but it's now much more diversified. There's a very strong banking, healthcare, as well as the aerospace industries in Houston. There's also over 60 colleges and universities, and a very, very busy port. The Port of Houston is the sixth largest in the world. Even though Houston is one of the largest cities in the U.S., it's also one of the most affordable major cities in the U.S. So whereas this business model may not work in a city like New York or San Francisco, where property values are so high, in Houston, you can still be in a major American city and be able to execute on a business model like this, because property values are much more reasonable. So we put together some data from the financial crisis of 2008 to 2010 that shows how these different markets like Houston and Memphis fared during that time compared to some other top tier markets in the US. Here, we've put together charts showing the change in home prices from 1987 to 2019 in Los Angeles, Miami, and New York City. And you can see here in the middle the percentage change from about the end of 2007 to the beginning of 2012. So the period of time that covers most of the impact of the great financial crisis. And as you can see, the percentage change in Los Angeles and home prices was negative 40% during that time period. In Miami, it was even more drastic, a change of negative 50%. And then in New York City, a change of negative 26%. During that same time period in Memphis, the change was only 15%. And as you can see, outside of this downturn, prices since 1987 have been very, very steadily rising. You don't get dramatic increases in prices every year, but you get very stable increases in prices over the long term. Houston fared even better. During that same time period, prices only went down about 4.2%, and have trended upward during the long term. So the point here is that in investing in markets like Houston and Memphis, as well as Cleveland, Ohio, you don't have to be worried about timing the market. You don't have to constantly be looking at data and trying to guess where the bottom of the market is. You can be reasonably confident that no matter when you buy, there's not going to be so much volatility in the prices, and the numbers are still going to work. Key points. By partnering with Paragon, we provide a turnkey solution that requires less involvement from the investor. We're here to hold the investor's hand, to really manage the day-to-day operations of the business. You don't have to worry about learning and navigating the very fragmented U.S. residential real estate market. The capital investment is protected by hard, tangible real estate assets, and it gives the investor the opportunity to build up a sizable portfolio of cash flowing, appreciating assets in the United States, while still qualifying for the E2 visa. Okay, so I will end my presentation there, and happy to take any questions.
I was muted, sorry. Brilliant, Brennan. Thanks very much for that. It was very insightful. There are a couple of questions from before, actually, that's actually tied in as well to Andy's presentation somehow. And there are two main things I would say here that is important to take into consideration. It's just basically the first thing. It is just like if the investor basically will need to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. I think that you have covered some of that. And how do you ensure that the business is compliant with the H visa based on that management, you know, of the assets and so on? So it is compliant with what Andy was saying. If you can just basically give a little bit of light there and so on.
Right. So the investor will assume the role of director of the company, but the investor will be backed by and supported by Paragon on the board of directors. So the investor will be able to participate in key decision making in terms of which properties we're going to acquire. The investor will do site visits to monitor progress of each rehab project, review weekly reports that are put together by the project manager, and then be involved in key decision making regarding which of these properties do we want to sell, which of them do we want to refinance and rent out to to tenants. So the investor is going to have a key decision making role in terms of
what is going to happen basically with the business.
Which assets to acquire and to dispose of. If there's any significant costs that come up during the rehab process, they'll have input on that, and they'll be kept well informed of progress through weekly reports on all of the different rehab projects, as well as be able to review income and expense statements for the properties that were rented out. So they'll be very well informed and very encouraged to participate in the decision-making process, but they won't have to rely on their own knowledge or expertise of their U.S. real estate market. They'll be able to rely on us to kind of guide their decision-making and manage the day-to-day of the business.
A comment from my side. I think this is a workable formula. And I also like the fact that the investment amount is 300,000 versus say like 200,000. My experiences with real estate projects, you have to invest more. I've had cases where investors tried to skimp on the investment and ran into trouble at the US consulate because it was a real estate project. A lot will depend, in Brennan's case, on his business plan, and from what I can see, it's a really great business plan that he's put together in terms of his presentation.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Just basically, I wanted to, yes, Mohammed.
I think what's really important and why Brennan's product is so cool is that, look, if you're moving to the United States and let's say you're living in India, it's very difficult to set up a new business sitting in Mumbai. You may or may not have spent any time in the United States learning the lay of the land. So investing with Paragon provides you with like a guardian angel investment thesis. And that's what, for us, which have had investment experience in the US, we forget about that. So it's very important to work with a group can provide you that support. And then perhaps later on, you can go and expand your investments and develop other businesses. And that's why we've seen these structured products really having some good advantages and uptakes with investors, if you follow my chain of thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it helps to gain that that path into the US, but at the same time focus on of making more income or expanding other business. At the end of the day, it is at the end of the day looking into expanding horizons and doing some economic migration, as you normally say, Mohammed, through investments, you know, in the Caribbean, through range in the US, through Paragon. It allows to that. It allows, I think, basically more than anything, peace of mind, which is more than
Spot on.
yeah. It is what most of the people are looking at, and it is why we as brands, you know, CSV Group, Malta Sotheby's, and so on, we look to partner with brands like these, like yourselves. Just basically, Mohammed, I wanted to have one question, actually, and this goes actually for you, more for you than for me, Mohammed. It is basically in the Grenada model, when a person goes through the program successfully, would that person become a legal citizen of the country of birth as well as a new citizen of Grenada? If so, would this new citizen of Grenada be entitled to all benefits of Grenadian-born citizen? At the end of the day, this is the answer is yes. It is full citizenship. But if you would like to tackle that as Grenada basically representative here.
Sure, delighted to. And, you know, a really valid question. First of all, yes, it is called a dual citizenship program. So Grenada fully recognizes you may continue to hold your Nigerian citizenship and also apply to Grenadian. So there's no issue with that. And your citizenship, is protected by the Constitution of Grenada. You have the same rights as a naturally born Grenadian. Your children have the same rights. And, you know, if your children get married, they can add their spouse to be Grenadian by registration at the police station 20 or 30 years down the line, and he or she can become a citizen of Grenada under the Citizenship Act. So there is no distinction between you and an individual who is born in Grenada once you have your citizenship, which is protected by the Constitution. And that's really important because in some Caribbean countries, you can't add your children after 5 years of obtaining your citizenship. Whereas Grenada, totally level playing field. And therefore it's really important, you know, to read the fine print. I don't want to use the cliche, but, you know, have your lawyers read the fine print of the citizenship law of whichever country you decide to, because it's a super important decision for you and your family's future.
100%. And actually, the applicants, when they go through the whole process, they will get that certificate of naturalization. I mean, they are naturalized as citizens according to the Citizenship and Investment Act and the Constitution of Grenada. So, I mean, they are 100%. It is not like happens, you know, in other jurisdictions. You know, I'm referring more to Vanuatu. That, you know, that discussion between honorary citizen or non-honorary citizen. What is that? What is going to happen, and so on. In Grenada, there is that clarity in that definition, and 100%. Yeah.
The lady has asked a really interesting follow-up question, saying including voting in local and general elections. And you know what? I, as a Commonwealth citizen, I'm not Grenadian, but if I establish my period of residency before the election, I can also vote. So, you know, providing you establish the period of residency, which is required as a Grenadian, naturally born or economic, you can vote in that election, okay? Now, I have to check if you can stand for political office, because there may be a requirement. There may be a requirement that you're born in Grenada to stand for the highest office of the land. So I'll have to check that. It's never been something which is relevant to me, so I've never looked into it. But yes, that's the way it is.
Indeed.
I think we preempted it because Mr. or Mrs. Vela, you know, said that was the next question. So, you know, if you share your email address, give me a day and I'll find out.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. The next one as well, it is for you. It is basically, you covered this before about the returns, Mohammed, in your presentation. But if you can give that brief about of the returns from the first day of investing, the share in the Grenada hotel.
Sure. So first of all, it's a $220,000 investment. The balance is government fees. So for a typical family of four, it's $80,000, and that's how we arrived at the $300,000 figure. During construction, we give you the entitlement to stay at our other Caribbean islands, the Park Hyatt or Kempinski. And from the day the hotel opens, the pro rata cash flow profit of the hotel is for your account. There's obviously no return during construction because the asset is being built. The hotel will be ready in November 2022. So, you know, it's my team have a tremendous wealth of experience on the development side. And, you know, I will show you pictures, or I can show you pictures before and after of the Kempinski, and you'll see it was completed within that sort of window, with a lot more adversities to face. So, you know, we're the only people who've been able to execute and do that. Building in the Caribbean, as I will say, is not for the faint-hearted. Building on a beach is not easy.
Well, you're building on sand, and there in Dubai you have your share of experience as well about that. But it is good. I mean, Mohammed, just basically on this and going a little bit more off topic as I have you on the panel. I know that aside you being involved in Caribbean citizenship by investment and citizenship by investment in general, and these will go towards as well Andy as he has his column in Forbes. You, Mohammed, you also have your column on IMI Daily, which I follow on those, to be honest with you, and you share really nice insights, not only on the real estate side of things, but the internal market, you know, at the end of the day, which I think it is quite important. Towards, you know, what is happening right now in all the pandemic, you know, we all have, you know, our views on what is happening in the market and so on, which, how do you think that this investment migration market would look into this post-pandemic world, and where do you think that the programs are going to add more or even less value for future applicants?
Look, today, an individual who is looking at second citizenship obviously has a certain net worth and is willing to allocate a percentage of that net worth to that asset class. And they want to maintain the optionality. Yes, global mobility is important, and it's going to be harder to get visas after this pandemic. I mean, we're in a situation that a citizen of the United States cannot travel into the European Union, but a citizen of Grenada, Dominica, and St. Kitts can. So see how essential that second citizenship is today if you have business in the European Union. Okay, that's one thing. And I think what's going to be super important is the ability to migrate, is the ability to live in a mature economy, and the ability to have access to either the United States, if your strategy is on that side, or the ability to access Western Europe, if your strategy is a European-based one. And that's where Grenada, I think, really comes onto its own, because for about 10% of the cost of a Cypriot passport, you can be living in the United States or have the option to live in the United States. I mean, I have a lot of clients, you know, living in Mumbai. They've been locked in their houses for 3 months. And irrespective of how much money you have in Mumbai, you know, space is a premium, okay? It is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. So a $2, $3, $4 million property, it's a 2 to 3 bedroom apartment. You're cooped up there with 3 kids, in-laws, your domestic staff, and you're probably thinking, you know what? If I had a $3 million house in Florida or Minnesota or in anywhere in the US outside New York, I'd have a lot of space and I'd have access to a healthcare system. And that's something which I think is going to be really important, that optionality. So I can see investors from the emerging markets saying, you know what, I might be really happy carrying on my business. I'm making lots of money in my hometown, but I need the optionality. God forbid this happens again. I can jump on my private jet from Lagos to Los Angeles, and I have the benefit of space. I have the benefit of a public healthcare system where me and my family can hide out the next pandemic. And what's super interesting as well, Andres, is we're launching 6 ultra luxury villas next to the 6 Senses. There'll be 500 square meter, 5,000 square foot homes for lifestyle buyers. They're priced at $6 million plus. And we're having a lot of interest in this because people are actually looking for a second home today. God forbid this happened again. And as working from home, or whatever this hashtag WFH has become really prominent, okay, people are saying, you know what, we can work from our villa and we can look at the sea, and I can get on a Zoom call with Andreas and Andy and Brennan, and I can do my business that way. So, this pandemic has changed the mindset. Yes, it's been difficult, but there's also been a lot of interesting concepts which have come out of it about the way we work, which I sincerely hope we maintain going forward, and we don't get back to the habits of just jumping on an airplane at first chance.
I completely agree on that. I mean, you said something which is extremely interesting before, that there is that ability at the end of the day, if you're a US national, you don't have the ability to get into the European Union due to the COVID-19 restrictions. But if you are a Caribbean national, you can, and actually you can move to the US, you can have that investment through Brennen and Paragon. That's something that is more diversified and allows that diversification, that is still that mobility and that access to healthcare. If for whichever reason, you want to be treated in any hospitals here in Europe, you will have that ability as well. If you want to be treated in the US, you will have that ability as well. And that optionality, that just in case, plus the ability to reach the China market through the visa-free access to China with the Grenadian passport, it is massive. I mean, I think that since I started working some years ago with the Grenadian Citizenship and Investment Program and advising clients on that, I think that on those two things, on the E2 and the China visa, was a little bit underrated at that time. It had a huge potential, and right now we are seeing that potential. We are seeing that maturity. We hasn't reached the maturity, but we have seen that within the program, and it's extremely, extremely interesting. And the change of lifestyle that you are mentioning, it is, yesterday I was reading an article on Forbes as well, and it was saying basically that all the houses outside London, they are seeing an upscale in prices. All those houses over, funny enough, 5 million GBP, your same bracket for Grenada, that 5 million GBP outside London and stuff, they are having much more interest because people, they want exactly what you're offering in Grenada through these ultra luxury villas. At the end of the day, if people, they want to, right now, an ultra high net worth individual just basically wants to have a space, they want to have time, they want to have nice place to live. They can get their yacht, they will get their yacht. There it is. I mean, look at that.
I mean, they are luxury next to the Six Senses Hotel. Nothing like it in the Caribbean today, and it'll be something special. But that's a discerning lifestyle buyer who not only wants citizenship, or citizenship is optional, but actually wants a foothold there. And when they're not using it, it can be put back into the hotel pool.
That is absolutely brilliant.
Sorry, I just thought I'd take that opportunity to showcase the.
No, absolutely. I think that is fantastic. I think that is fantastic because it is lots of value. I believe that proposition has, especially today. I mean, most people are traveling, by private jets, by yachts and stuff, and they want exactly what these properties are going to be offering, in the Caribbean. So yeah, I mean, I think that that was a very, very interesting, nice conversation. I don't know, guys, if you would like to have some remarks on your presentation, some words, please feel free to do so. Myself, I already had my share, and I thank you very much, enormously, the three of you, for having your time and giving you the presentations.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks very much, everyone, and we'll be in touch. Thanks very much for the attendees, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Thank you, Andy, and thanks, Mohammed, very much.
Bye.
Give me just one. Yeah. Brilliant. Excellent.